Hello, this is Thomas Sheltra for Moreland University, and this is going to be my final presentation for Module 39, Unit 14, Activity 1. And so here I'm going to be looking at the school improvement plan implementation during the clinical practice that I've had. I'm chair of social studies at Basis International and Bilingual Schools, Wuhan. And the dates that I've been working on my clinical practice have been um, from April until we still have a couple of weeks left, but essentially pretty much finished, except for trying to make sure that I have all of the materials ready to go for on-site training in about 3 weeks. Okay, so just to give you a brief background on the school. So Basis International and Bilingual Schools, we are a network of schools throughout China, originating in the US. So if you look up Basis charter schools in the US, you're going to see, I think there's like maybe 8 or 10 of them. And then we have campuses in China that are part of the basis in America, and then also we have a basis Bangkok. So, we're a private school. Student background is going to be generally more affluent because tuition is between 40 and $50,000 a year. Um, we are in our third year at Wuhan of operation. We're gonna have our first graduating class next June. Um, Even though we are an international school as well as a bilingual school, for the most part, our student body is predominantly Chinese English language learners. Um, Now that we're in our upcoming our fourth year, we've already had our first round of contract renewals with faculty and staff. So one of the sort of the needs that is identified here is as for priority one is the high amount of faculty turnover that we had last year, and that I guess will continue in the future, and we can get that in the next priority. Um, and then recently, over not just last year, but starting in our second year, is more of a sort of a demand for kind of focusing on the sort of academic and behavioral issues that we've had at the school, and mainly trying to focus on how we can get faculty buy-in in how and trying to support those two issues that are going on. And that also is going to be sort of my third and fourth priority that we'll discuss. And so here are the four priorities that I set out for the school improvement plan this year. So originally, priority number one was going to be teacher retention. But after speaking with my head of school and then also my head of division, there are too many variables that go into international teaching and why teachers decide to stay at a location or decide to leave. And so because the feedback that I got at the very beginning was kind of all over the place about why people would either want to leave, renew their contracts, or planning on leaving, is kind of spread all over the place. And so it was very difficult to try and identify specific areas to keep teachers because, we might keep one or two, but then a handful of others will leave. And again, those are going to be for a whole host of variable reasons. So one of the ways that I wanted to change it while kind of keeping the same um, idea is that as new teachers come in, kind of strengthening the onboarding procedures, how we observe as chairs, and also senior leadership, and then also the way we coach and mentor new teachers. And so, as I discussed with Mr. Cumberworth a while back, one of the reasons why we wanted to, or I wanted to focus on this area of a as a priority was that as we get new teachers in, making them feel comfortable where they are, making sure they feel supported, making sure they have the tools and the resources to succeed in the classroom, is likely to build a foundation where those teachers would want to stay for another contract. And so I think that this is one area to tackle, not just to retain teachers, but also to show teachers that are coming in, this is the way that we're going to support you. This is the way that you're going to see growth, and through that mentorship and coaching. The next one is ELL instructional enhancement. So as part of our mission and our values at Basis, we are known for being a very academically rigorous school, and so that can kind of be a double-edged sword when it comes to the fact that because a majority, if not all of our students are going to be ELL learners, it's trying to figure out the balancing act of how are we going to maintain our academic standards for the students that we want to have in our classroom, but how are we also going to differentiate and give them the support in English to try to enhance and develop those skills where they can feel prepared to be basis students in the first place. And then that goes into number three, the student well-being. This year, I think we've made a lot of great strides in that. And Mr. Cumberworth also mentioned that we were going to have additional counseling support. So hopefully, when we get to priority three, we can show what we've done this year, but areas where we still can improve. And then also parent and community engagement. Excuse me. One of those areas, as far as community engagement, it's a little hard, and I wrote in my reflection, and also it's in one of the videos that I've had with my debrief with Mr. Cumberworth, was the fact that by law, our students can't volunteer outside of school because of the labor laws and the way that it sort of looks, I guess. So that community engagement, and that's recognized by Mr. Cumberworth, is that that's actually kind of an area that lacks, where there is no real sort of solution. But as far as community engagement, parents being the largest stakeholder of the school community, because we're a private school, still kind of leave that there, just because it kind of molds into one. But it would be a nice goal in the future to try and get students to go outside of the classroom where we can be valuable to the community around us, even though we are not a public school. And one of those ideas was that maybe trying to engage in English language learning with our students and those in those public schools, and high school students that surround us. So if we go to priority one, observations, coaching, and mentorship. So here are some of the accomplishments that I think that have sort of helped over the year, as we've been doing this internship. One was not just speaking to colleagues in my department when there's an observation or a coaching session, but just like with students, trying to build relationships, um, and then also trying to sort of make conversations as informal as possible to try and build rapport and trust with those teachers. So that way, when they know that I'm coming into the classroom or we're having a coaching conversation, that there's a level of support there, that that has been created to try to enhance that mentorship. The other thing is giving colleagues resources that are available for them for teaching. And then also just the communication, which still needs to be worked on my end based on the 360 feedback. But making sure that deadlines, things that are upcoming in the short term, medium, and long term, need to be addressed, and just making sure that everything is as efficient as possible. Here you're going to see, so one of the feedbacks was add more specific examples of what successful coaching conversations or mentoring support might look like in practice. Um, so uh, that is actually one of the artifacts that is in there for standards. But for our and I wanted to keep it sort of anonymous. But I have the checklist over here on the top left that shows you things that have been completed, and things that still need to be done. And at the very end, I have the link to my e-portfolio, so you can check out those SIP priorities and things that have been done. On the right here, where it says TL2 strategies of learning, this would be the observation checklist that we would have for chairs or senior leadership or our CIOs that are coming from other networks. So that way, when they come into the classroom, they can kind of have, whether they're looking specifically for one TL strand or they're looking at all of them in the classroom. This can help kind of guide us as leaders to what it is that we're looking for, what we observed. Again, I always like to say that when we go into the classroom and we observe, we're only getting a snapshot. We're not getting a full picture because it's only one class. And generally speaking, those observations are only going to be between 15 and 30 minutes. Very rarely do we stay around for the whole class. So not only are you getting a snapshot of a teacher's class, but then you're even getting a shorter picture based on what it is that you're observing in that period of time. And so that might not be all of the TL strategies. And so this is a good way of making sure that you can kind of see what it is that teachers are doing when you go into the classroom. The second artifact that has been done is sort of the coaching conversation. And one of the reasons why this part I feel is important is because when you have those conversations with teachers, and I understand that we have a lot of things on our plate um, when we're doing our job. Uh, However, some of the reflections from teachers over this past year has kind of bothered me a little bit, just because, I'm not expecting the most, someone's mind being blown based on a conversation, and they're writing a reflection that's like, oh my God, my life has changed because of this conversation. But it's more just to make sure that the feedback that we give as chairs is meaningful and actionable to the teacher, that can then take that feedback into the classroom or into the office when they're planning. But also, it's for the teacher to kind of have a meaningful reflection of what that conversation was and what they can take away from it. It doesn't have to be long, but just something that they can think about as they go through that process and that reflection. And so one of the things that I wanted to go back to is the feedback, is that if you look at the places where I put those as a standard, I have as an artifact conversations that I have had based on observations, and then also their feedback in our BG cloud. But I just wanted to show the sort of artifacts that I'm building for this upcoming year, so that way it can be shown, not only just with a checklist and a detailed plan of how it is. We're going to have like new teachers come in and get them prepared and ready for Summer Institute and on-site training, but also the two artifacts as far as the observation checklist and the reflection form is how we're going to go into the classroom and find evidence of the TL strands, but that teachers are going to also kind of reflect on our conversations in a little more meaningful way, to kind of showcase that sort of mentorship and that coaching, and hopefully sort of strengthen those relationships, and get teachers to want to stay here because they feel supported. For ELL enhancement, one of the biggest areas that we've worked on is obviously, we have a saying at our school that, and I'm pretty sure it's just a kind of a broad statement for all teachers, but like we're always all teachers are English teachers, and so um, one of the ways that we've improved that has been through making sure we have, like, vocabulary quizzes each week, making sure that we're you know giving students resources like graphic organizers and guided notes, to have something in their hands, so that way they're continuously learning the English language. Also collaborating with colleagues. One of the ones that we did for the module with the PLC was with Mr. Appleman, and that's where we identified students that were in his English classroom, my economics classroom, and they were struggling and trying to find meaningful ways. And so I listed this priority as ELL enhancement and not necessarily a PLC, because, as we've discussed earlier, it's going to take a lot of time for teachers to meet voluntarily, because there isn't enough time to carve out in our weeks where we can have a structured PLC, but more just ELL enhancement to strategize and work with our ELL department for next year, because now we have a chair, and we have a formalized department. So if you look through the feedback, says one area that could be further strengthened is ELL support, particularly through consistent language scaffolds and inclusive instructional strategies that help learners access content, communicate their perspectives, and engage confidently with diverse viewpoints and experiences. And I think that's a great piece of feedback. And so one of the areas, obviously, you see here in the bottom right, we have the checklist of things that need to be completed, put in motion, or pending. And so for the first one, a priority to implementation packet that's created is, if you look over on the left-hand side, the PD sequence overview. This is one area where I've spoken with a couple of ELL teachers that were responsible last year for doing walkthroughs, but they missed some classes, or they were only focused on certain subjects or certain grade levels. And so this would be something that would be for all of the students and faculty in classes that we have at Basis, is to look through every class and have separated PD sessions. And this would be a collaboration between ELL department and all of the other sort of chairs and faculty and all the other departments, and what it is that we can do as teachers to make sure that we're differentiating in the classroom, we're appropriately scaffolding, but really, it's coming down to building that base of vocabulary. Where can we get from great students coming in, wherever it is that they're coming in at the school, whether it's, from grade 1 all the way up to a maximum of grade 9. Where can we take those students, and where can we continuously improve their vocabulary and English language learning, to make sure that when they get ready for AP exams or benchmarks or comprehensive exams, that they're feeling as confident and as well prepared as possible. And part of that is our responsibility as teachers, is to make sure that we're going around and we're looking for and identifying, again, because we want to make sure that academics are rigorous here at our school. And so trying to find the best opportunities to do that. And one of those is an example of looking at vocabulary with sentence stems as well. And so, how is it that we can take these tools, go into our classroom, and specialize it for whatever subject it is that we're teaching, and make sure that students have the tools and the resources, and that we're doing a good enough job as teachers to make sure that they feel prepared for those assessments. For priority number three, student well-being. Again, collaboration with colleagues. So, on sort of what can we do as teachers. So again, we have a support counselor, and we're going to have another one next year. And so we also have two deans of students, as well as other senior leadership like vice head of division, head of division, and then the same thing for primary. But one of the things that I wanted to focus on as well is what is it that we can do as teachers to make sure that um, when we have something like an academic issue or a behavioral issue, or there are students that are um, acting out or not participating or not coming to class on time, you know, there's a whole host of incidences that can be perceived as maybe a student just acting out or having troubles. But as teachers, even though we're focused on being English teachers, we all are also trying to make sure that students are coming in and behaving properly, and making sure that we can identify as teachers what are issues that are a student and child acting out, where that needs to be corrected through our sort of behavioral matrix. And what is an issue of behavior and acting out where this is a student sort of looking for help, and how we can identify those students and be more proactive before it's too late. And so here, one of the feedbacks is one thing to keep working on is outlining how families will be involved in the implementation process. The plan does a strong job addressing teacher training and classroom supports, but including specific strategies for communicating with and engaging families. And that is a great point for feedback, and I really appreciated that. And so just to showcase one of the things a couple of the things that we've done is obviously on the bottom left, you see we have the checklist. So it's an idea of, so define priority three student well-being goal around belonging, student emotional learning, implementation, climate survey. So we've done those things. We created the survey, also included the 360 survey on top of that for things that can go into year two. But here you see we had a mental health week, and this was at the end of APs and getting ready for our comprehensive exams. Here you can see we did an ice cream social, and then we also had sort of like a water day with students at the end on a Friday. And this was done the week before the comprehensive exams to try to get students to sort of unwind, de-stress, and have like a little bit more mental focus and clarity on their studies. And these are things that for most students can go a long way. Because if you go to sort of a traditional public school or even other private schools, maybe they're not focused as much on student well-being. And so here, this is a good way of showing parents, that this is the way we take care of your children in school, and that even though academics is important, making sure that they're happy and healthy, mentally and physically is also important. But to go on to the last part of that, but for communicating with and engaging families. One of the artifacts that I do have in the school implementation plan for priority three are templates on how teachers can communicate with parents Also making sure that we CC deans of students, senior leadership, and then also our school counselors to make sure that we're communicating with parents. But that will be something that's implemented for next year. It's not something we necessarily do now, but that will be something that we can showcase for next year, and working on those things. And then the next, over on the top left here is what are the sort of strategies, and how we're going to take, the social emotional learning curriculum and advisory. So we have advisory, counseling access and wellness activities. So like you see in the pictures below, is making sure that those are consistent routines that we as teachers are doing to make sure that students have all of the fundamentals that they need, and supports that they need, for a strong year academically and behaviorally. And then the last one, priority four, parenting and community engagement, and that can kind of go into the last part here is engaging with families, is making sure that we focus um, on engaging, having engagement with parents um, consistently. And so if you see here, the feedback is one area for improvement would be to include specific success benchmarks for each major activity, such as target attendance rates, survey satisfaction goals, or alumni participation percentages. So for that last part, we're not going to have an alumni base until the end of next year. So that's going to be one of the hard parts for this priority, is making sure that we do have an alumni network. But we do have we're going to have a graduating class of 18 students, so that should be something that's very easy to do. Again, because we're a private school, and sometimes the student body and the parents can be very transactional, where you might see a student for 2 years, and then their parent decides to move that student to another school or another country. And so there's kind of very little that we can do on that aspect of keeping in touch. Um, so one is here you see the oops, sorry. The over here in the sort of in the middle, the checklist that's been going on. So, again, just like other parts of these priorities, a lot of them are going to be implemented this school year, 2026, 2027. But here's a way that we can look at some of the things that we've already done. So if you look at the bottom left, this is communication with parents. So I have many more in Artifact for um, module for Standard 8. And so that's one of the things that we did a lot of this year was consistent communication to parents, mainly about academics, not behavioral issues. And so therefore, if you kind of go back to the feedback here for priority three, kind of blending in to make sure that when we communicate with parents, we're also making sure that we identify, hey, these are some of the things we've seen your son or daughter do, throughout the last month. This wasn't the same way a couple months ago. Just want to know if anything's going on. And so that's where creating that template is beneficial, because that gives teachers a way to communicate with parents, where they don't have to sort of divulge private things that are going on, but to make sure that we have a template that just says, hey, your son or daughter is showing some signs that are a little worrisome. We just wanted to touch base to make sure everything is okay. Is there anything we can do here at the school to kind of help? Um, and then you see on the bottom right, you see one of the Q&A sessions that we've had with parents throughout the school year. This one was looking at AP and honor classes, getting them ready. And then again, you see here, sorry, the blurred face, that's Mr. Cumberworth. But he was giving a discussion about comp exams at the end of the year for middle school students and primary school students, and how they're, how they relate to everything. And obviously, this slide was geared towards older students, kind of seventh or eighth grade, and how those comps will affect them as they get into high school and they get ready to take AP exams. Um, so yeah, so you can kind of see that overall, there is a great deal of communication with the parents and the community as stakeholders to come in. One of the first things we do at the beginning of the year is we have a meet the teacher night. And then we have, winter festival, we have a spring festival. And so those are ways for parents to come in and also participate and engage with the school and other children. And so one of the things that we want to continue to prepare for next year is making sure we have that alumni base right there. And then also like a survey of satisfaction goals. So again, kind of goes into the 360 survey that I conducted. However, parents were the least uh, um, responsive to the survey. One of I did do a Teams one because I had a Google survey. A lot of them couldn't access that, and then I sent out another one that was just a Microsoft Teams version, and they were able to complete that. However, it seems like some of the feedback was not like very responsive in what I was looking for, because almost everybody gave me like high marks, and so I think they kind of just went through the survey to do the survey. Another issue is English language learning. So most of the parents are Chinese speaking only. Um, so it might be a language barrier issue as well. But yeah, so this is for priority four. And then how my leadership practice changed over the course of the year. So a couple of things. One is developing goals, as far as like what we're going to do for observations, creating the strategy banks, working with ELL support staff and the department now for how we can build priority three, making sure that my colleagues in the social studies department have enough resources and tools that are needed to be successful in the classroom. That's that's a huge thing that has been done over the course of the year, and kind of rebuilding those relationships with colleagues. And I think overall is being a little bit more proactive. Obviously, every week when you have a certain module that's going on, and even the standards, you can gear sort of your focus based on what it is those priorities need. But I think overall, being proactive, but collaboration has been something that has really changed in the way that I view my not only my teaching but also the leadership. Is that it very often can be wanting to do everything yourself, and just kind of like taking your ideas and spreading it to others. But really, I think one of the most impactful things and the most beneficial things has been going to colleagues and asking their opinions about things and learning from them, and then seeing the ways in which we can try to help each other. And I think that, um, that's one thing about leadership, is that, being collaborative is not a sign of ineffective leadership, but I think it's a sign of really strong leadership, because it's taking the time to listen to outside voices about how they're feeling and dealing with things, and trying to find ways to help and support them as well. and not only the students. And for the last part, so for next year or this current year, is so on one hand we have to implement is to make sure that I'm taking the tools that I've created, that have not only been completed now to set things up for next year, but to make sure that all of those things that I just talked about and all the artifacts that I have throughout all of the modules, all of the standards, and all of the SIP priorities is to make sure that they are consistent routines that we start building as a school from the very beginning of the on-site training that we're going to do in a couple weeks. The next is constant monitoring. And one thing is collecting feedback. Now, this gets into another question of what it uh hold on one second. I is I have to go so making sorry, making sure that we monitor, and I didn't put in the adjust part, so I apologize. But I can go back and read that. So it's to collect feedback from teachers, students, and parents while reviewing the observations and the student work and assessment results, taking that data and then being able to see what needs to be changed, what can remain as far as a strategy. And again, that goes into that collaboration to make sure that when there are changes that need to be made, it's something that's going to benefit a majority of classrooms. I'm going to stop sharing right now because I just wanted to go back and I wanted to go back to that adjust part. So please give me a second. Um, and so that adjust part meant to say to take uh, what has been done and then to adjust uh, what we monitor, and that way we can then sort of gravitate. Hold on, let me just share this so that way I don't sound dumb. Okay. So take the evidence that we collect, and then again with communication, collaboration, is see what has been working, what has not been working, and then what also needs to be adjusted to respond to the stakeholders like teachers, staff, students, and also parents. And so here is the link to my Google portfolio. And now I'm going to stop sharing. And so I just want to say thank you to everybody who watched this and didn't fall asleep. So one of the things I think, as far as the feedback that I've gotten from all of the module instructors, but Melissa, Trevor, Sarah, and Cello, I think that one of the, and having it be such a small cohort for the year is that. When we're looking at each other's work, and obviously I know we're trying to be positive and give good and meaningful feedback, but also constructive, is I like the fact that all of us have been very honest with each other, and that the feedback that we give each other, even though we don't know each other outside of our Zoom classroom, is that it is always with the best interest at heart for all of our work and what it is that we're doing. And I think that that's sort of it's a very nice way of looking at your work by having other people who um, are in a similar program as you make comments and trying to put everybody in a successful position. And so I really appreciate all of the feedback that everybody's given me throughout this entire year. And I think that that also has been very helpful and beneficial to not only my teaching in the classroom but also my leadership. And I hope that we continue to communicate with each other outside of this classroom. And I just want to say thank you to everybody, and thank you for watching this. Take care.